Hello, my name is Taylor Pankowitz. I'm doing Romanticism for my major assignment 2. Um, Romanticism is really hard to give it like a clear definition. Um, it's after the classical period and before or at the beginning of the Victorian period, which includes Romance and Gothic. I would say in Romanticism there's a lot of drama, beautiful landscapes, vibrant colors, facial expressions, and emotion, and showcases the difference between fallen women and pure women. A pure woman being a blonde, holy virgin, and a fallen woman being a prostitute with like crazy red hair. Um, these women are usually shown to be in like different positions in art, which really shows like instead of just their hair color, is easy to find the difference between. The history of Romanticism, we'd say it starts in the early 1800s, between 1800 and 1850. The artists I will be discussing are Francisco de Goya, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, and Eugene Delacroix. Francisco de Goya was a Spanish painter and printmaker. During his time as an artist, he created about 700 paintings, 900 drawings, and almost 300 prints, which reflect his political views. His work was powered by his political background. He was involved in the Supreme Court of Spain. A lot of his art, I believe, they have themes of religion and portraits. Religion being war, since a lot of war is influenced by religion then and now. And portraits because he did a lot of self-portraits and portraits with other famous artists. The first work I want to go over is Witch's Flight, which I think is very important because it's actually very modern for its time. The romance in it, I guess, would be the superstition and the paranormal, being that like witches. And I think a lot of the gothic behind it would be the witches sucking blood of an innocent person. Another part I would believe would be romantic is the position that the victim is in. It's very dramatic, and they are very like clearly in distress, whereas the people in the background or on the bottom of the picture are covering their ears. They're trying to run away. So it's a very dramatic painting. La Mahavasita was painted again by Goya. It was almost a response to the Prime Minister of Spain, who was known as a womanizer. He painted the portrait on the right, and Goya painted the one on the left. He wanted to give justice to the unnamed model. The portrait on the right was actually the first documented time that a woman was depicted with body hair or pubic hair without negative connotation. This shows beauty versus just a woman's body being sexualized. Goya wanted to make her facial expression bold, which again is another romantic style, and really gave her a more, I would say, forward view. Like she's very direct in the portrait, whereas the woman on the right is very timid. This is definitely probably one of the most controversial pieces that Goya has done. The next one I want to talk about is Saturn devouring his own son. Excuse me. Saturn was afraid to have been overthrown by his son when he was in power. Besides the obvious of in the picture Saturn literally eating his own son. I would say it's a contrast between old age and new age, or just young versus old. It's a representation of war in Spain, where the fatherlands were consumed by war and revolution. Goya's influence today is still portrayed in churches across Madrid. He was loved for his portrayal of human torment. Now, the relationship between Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres versus Eugene Delacroix. Ingres was a French neoclassical painter, and Delacroix was his nemesis because of his romantic style. So this was an example of neoclassicalism versus nonconformist romanticism. Neoclassicalism would be the revival of classical art, whereas nonconformist romanticism would be like the rebellious stage of this era, where romanticism was getting very popular. On the bottom is a political cartoon made to show the difference between Ingres and Delacroix. These are two paintings painted by Delacroix and Ingres. I think it's very easy to see who painted what, just based off of the style and the brush strokes as well. The one on the right was clearly painted by Delacroix because of the position of the woman, her facial expression, and almost this simplicity put into her, where she's not as detailed, laying down, and almost very comfortable, whereas on the left, Ingres painted a woman who needed to be very posed, a lot of detail in her clothing, which is definitely a very classical style and idea. Also, the woman on the left is very beautiful, whereas the woman on the right looks very distressed, even though she's still dressed in like jewelry and is still kind of done up. It's almost like two different forms of beauty. And this is kind of like the difference in Romanticism and Gothic, which like leads you into the Victorian period. I find the Victorian period very important with Romanticism because Romanticism is kind of what it stems from. Today, Romanticism and the Victorian period are still seen in movies, in romance. For the Victorian period, a huge influence was Dracula. Again, like we'd seen in Goya's Witch's Flight, where there was blood sucking, gore, women were voluptuous and redheaded, who were once blonde and pure and virgins. So on the left is a photo from Dracula, where Dracula is about to suck the blood of a woman. You'll notice that the facial expression and the posture of the woman are very much like what Goya would paint, whereas on the right, still something that we would see from Goya is a vibrant, colorful landscape with two lovers. And that is my presentation on Romanticism. Thank you very much.